Welcome, Chris. Good morning.
Thank you.
You like LeBron's explanation?
I mean, there's so much he said. I've thought a lot about it because one clip we didn't play was when he said, I didn't want a Chris Webber moment. I was checking to see, did we have a timeout? Right. And that would imply that when he found out about that they did have a timeout, that he was relieved. So I thought about what in the world could LeBron mean? So I think he's sitting there quietly, thinking about all that he said was going through his mind. And he begins thinking, maybe we didn't have a timeout. Because why am I the only one tripping that nobody called the timeout? Right. And so he asked Ty Lue and finds out they had one. And then that's when he's like, there's some relief, but it's anger. Well, why didn't you call the timeout? Right. So, look, I think I get where the way he's feeling. He's like, JR, I'm not asking for 25 points. I'm asking you to know the score. That's all right? T. Lue, I'm not asking you to be Red Auerbach, Phil Jackson. Just call a timeout if we got it. And so I get the anger. Of course, it wasn't the proper reaction. At that moment in time, the Cleveland Cavaliers, his teammates needed a calming effect. They needed him to be like, all right, look, let's get it going. Game's not over. We got 5 minutes to close out this game. That's what they needed, okay? He didn't give it to him. I understand the reaction, but I don't think he was throwing them under the bus because if you look at his explanation, he admitted himself what you've been saying. He said, I was thinking, should I have just driven, right? Instead of passing to George Hill, could I have gone to the basket? So that's looking at himself and then saying, maybe we didn't have a timeout. Like, I may have messed up too. So I think he was just totally opening up and sharing what he was
I think the thing is, if you look, he tried to get a timeout, and Ed Malloy had done repositioned himself, and so he didn't see it. So LeBron is thinking, well, he didn't give me a timeout. Maybe we don't have one, and he don't want to tee me up because that'd be a terrible way to lose the game. I call a timeout. They go shoot the free throw. And then now, all of a sudden, the Chris Webber play is number 2. I'm number 1 because it happened to LeBron James. No question. Also, what's going through his head is like, JR, score. They always, when they commit a foul, what's the first thing they do? They look up at the board. Let me see the replay. Yeah. So up on that board, they also, score, points, fouls. They have all that up there. JR, that's all I'm asking you to, JR, count. Because you can count to 16 million because that's what you got because of me. Now, all I'm asking you, I don't need 20. I don't need 25. But I need you to be able to count and give me like 10 to 12 points. Can you do that, JR? Skip, there's a lot of things. Let me tell you something. Chris, you and I both raised in the South. And everybody say, you need a calming effect. When I was crying, my granddaddy say? He said, boy, I'm going to give you something to cry about.
I get it. You're right.
That's not just a story.
I've heard
Hey, that ain't no situation where, hey, Papa, put your arm around me and tell me everything going to be okay. He said, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Well, you just did. That's why I'm crying. Buck up.
You dealing with grown men.
Maybe Ty Lue should have said that to LeBron James.
I wish he might.
Huh?
I wish he might.
Who was throwing the biggest tantrum on the bench?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, that's a good point. Why didn't T. Lue say, look, we need you. Let's get it? Because the game...
Everybody in the huddle seemed intimidated by LeBron's disassociation. LeBron's putting his head in his hands, and everybody's just cowering.
Yeah,
but if you think about it, Skip, at the end of the game, when they're walking towards the bench, only one player comes to shake his hand. That's Kyle Korver. Shakes JR's hand. Yeah. Ain't nobody else touch JR or say anything to him. Only Kyle Korver, because they know he done stepped in it. He stepped in that one.
Go ahead, Skip.
Okay, look. Everything you just said about what's going through the highest IQ mind in basketball, I think in basketball history, is LeBron James. That all should run through your head after the game's over. It's what we're all taught from grade school on. In that moment, you have to let it all go because you still have a golden opportunity at Golden State. You have 5 minutes of overtime, and you had them on the ropes. You had them on the run down the stretch. They couldn't figure out how to close it. Am I the alpha? Am I the number one? Is it my turn to shoot or your turn to shoot? They were shaky down the stretch because they're often shaky down the stretch. Now you got 5 minutes to close a deal that you should have closed at the end of regulation, and it became a disaster. We get it, but it's over. It is crying over spilled milk. Don't cry about it. Fix it. I just got a text from a close friend of Michael Jordan's, and he said, you know what Mike would have done in the huddle at that moment? He would, to your point that you just made about JR, he would have pulled JR close, and in language I cannot use here on the air, he would have said, I'm going to your money. Now you're going to hit me a shot in overtime.
Yeah.
You're going to hit me a big shot.
Yeah.
And he would have put the fear of God back into JR and tried to snap him out of his funk and say, here we go. We got this, right? Mm-hmm. You can't do like they just go as LeBron goes. And then he just wasn't into it. And maybe they weren't going to win the overtime anyway. Maybe it was just such a disaster that they were just psychologically shot. But LeBron failed to reset the tone that he'd been setting the whole regulation. Yeah. He'd scored 49 points. They couldn't stop him. Right. And then he wouldn't even take a shot for the first 2 minutes and 26 seconds of overtime, and you're down 7 when he finally elects to shoot. And he takes 4 shots half-heartedly, in my view, and missed all 4 of them, and they get blown off the floor in overtime.
But, Skip, the thing is, you're asking him to think about these are the things that he should think about after the game. But that's not how his mind works.
Maybe not.
He's constantly thinking because he's always like, when he goes down the floor and he starts to see something, when did they do that? They did. He's always thinking like that, Skip. So he can't turn his mind off and says, okay, I'm going to set this aside because I can see it. I can see him because he's like, man, 4.5 seconds. JR grabs the rebound. Call timeout. And because JR... I think what made him upset, Skip, is that if JR would have said, my bad, I'm good. But JR says, I thought we had the lead.
I think
well, he was saying my bad. I mean, he was saying, I blew it.
I think LeBron fell victim to what I still think a lot of people are falling victim to. JR, that was a horrible blunder. But he did not cost them the game.
He did not.
Well, he cost them an opportunity to win the game. But at that point, you still very much alive.
Very
much alive.
I mean, I could make a case you might even have the psychological edge at that point.
You might, because you had the chance to win.
Yes.
Golden State didn't have the chance to win. So they just all felt like it was over. And again, we talked about it earlier. I think they felt we were great for 48 minutes. We had them. We had a game nobody thought we could get.
Because remember, they were down. They were up, then they were down. And you're like, okay, well, here it is. Golden State finna pull away from them. And LeBron says, nope. And LeBron gets that three-point play that puts them up 2. And lo and behold, what happened? I said, just run them off the three-point line. Steph gets down the line, down in the lane. Kevin Love comes over late, layup, and 1. I'm like, dude, jeez.
You know, he mentioned Draymond going in early, that he saw that.
Okay.
So that's more on.
Okay, but this is just me. I got to call BS on that because we all know about it from the last 2-minute report that came out the day after. And LeBron knows about it. As great as his mind is, I don't think he would let that run back through his mind. He is genius. But again, nobody calls that. Everybody invades the lane before the free throw hits. No ref with the game on the line is going to give George Hill at Golden State another free throw to win it. They're not going to win it.
But here, my thing is that everybody's saying, well, they reviewed it and they got the call right. Because at the end, that's what we want, right? Did Draymond step in the lane? If he stepped in the lane prematurely, at the point of the game is inconsequential. You got to make that call because they went back to they said, well, they went back to the replay. They got the call right. Okay.
Block,
right.
Block,
yeah. So if that's the end result, if the end result is the getting it right, the end result is George Hill should have had another opportunity to miss that free throw.
Okay, but the problem with that is it happens on almost every free throw. Yeah. So how are you going to call that one at the end of the game?
I just thought the refs took a coward way out because LeBron was nowhere near the restricted area. He wasn't close. He wasn't because that was
about 1.5 feet, 2 feet. Yeah.
So that was the end because Chris, how you go in there and look at that? Okay, we're gonna see if once he's out of the restricted area, that should be it. You can't go back in there and look. I'm looking. The guy catches the ball. I'm gonna see if he had possession. No, he did not have possession, but the guy passed interference, so we're going to give you No!
I mean, you're right. It never should have been reviewed, but I just can't get that upset about it because they were right.
Yeah.
It was a block. Like, I don't think it was that close because LeBron's turning.
Yep. Well, see,
I thought it was definitely a block.
Actually, I've talked to a couple of officials, and they said because his left foot, they said he could be moving to absorb the contact. He said, but his left foot, they said that his left foot was planted. So once that left,
so they saying it
because
could've been a
they're
charge.
saying the same thing that Steve Javie said. Steve Javie said, I would leave it intact because his left foot is stationary. Because I wanted it. That's the only time I try because I want to hear what he had to say. See if I was right. Because I'm.
Oh, so you do listen to the sound?
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, once he comes up and started explaining, because I want to
He
hear.
don't say much.
No.
He just gives the officials, view.
Because see, I want to know if I was right. Because I say that's charged. You don't kid him out. Get that thing. He's like, I got it.
This is where sometimes, we know how smart and intelligent LeBron is, but you've heard the saying paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes you think so much that maybe he couldn't get the refs kind of blowing it out of his mind. Couldn't get JR blowing it, George
Hill missing the shot,
that's I think what it was.
Last point. Ty Lue, when asked about LeBron's response about, I was asking whether we had a timeout, the C-Web possibility. Ty Lue had made a pointed point, I thought, when he said, end of the game, we all knew we had a timeout left, so no problem with the communication. So he was not so subtly saying, nope, I'm not going to buy that from my superstar because they had a timeout with 36 seconds left, and he says he made everybody aware we saved one timeout.
What about, did he tell JR to score? Did he tell JR to score that?
That's a whole nother issue.
I think LeBron knew we have a timeout, but I think sitting on that bench, he began to wonder, why didn't Ty Lue call one? Why didn't anybody else call one?
But Ty said he was trying to call one from the distant bench. It was in the other half court.
It was the same situation with Houston and Golden State. Remember they trapped Clay in the corner? And they were trying to call timeout. But all the officials are looking at Clay. Is he walking? Is he getting fouled? Is he trying to call timeout? They're not looking at Steve Kerr. Even Draymond was trying to call a timeout. But they're not looking at Draymond because he doesn't have the ball. Steve Kerr, he's not, unless he's right there in their ear, they're not going to hear that way down at the other end.
Yeah.
But Bron will make up for it tonight. Watch what he do tonight.
You better.
Goat Mass tomorrow?
Big game.
Go.
They get tonight.
Big game.
Skip.
Yep.
I said 5.
Have this man ever let you down?
That time.
Yeah, that man,
2011
LeBron James,
finals.
a 40-point triple-dub. If the man tell you grass going to turn to
need
cheese,
that.
start hustling cracker.
Really?
That still might not be enough. The man may have a 40-point triple-double, because we've seen it before. We saw it against Boston, and they lost by double digits.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.